Imagine this for a second. What if your own hand, the one you've used your whole life to eat, to write, to wave hello, suddenly decided it had a mind of its own? Today, we're diving into one of the most bizarre conditions in all of neurology, alien hand syndrome. It's real, it's unsettling, and it completely messes with our idea of who's really in charge.
Our story kicks off way back in 1908 with this absolutely chilling account from a doctor named Kurt Goldstein. Just listen to that. A patient's own hand tried to strangle her, and she had to physically fight it off. I mean, that sounds like something straight out of a horror film, but this was a real person, a real patient. This was the first time the medical world had to grapple with this profound mystery.
In that case, just forces you to ask this fundamental question, right? How is it even possible for a part of your own body to turn on you, to act like it doesn't belong to you anymore? Well, that's exactly the mystery we're going to unravel today.
So this terrifying idea of a rogue limb isn't just a nightmare. It has a name: alien hand syndrome. And let me be perfectly clear, this is not science fiction. It's a very real, documented neurological disorder that shows us just how fragile our connection to our own bodies can be.
Okay, so what is it exactly? Alien hand syndrome, or AHS for short, is when a person's hand, and sometimes even a leg, just starts moving and doing things on its own. But here's the kicker, the part that makes it so deeply strange. It's not just that the movement is involuntary, it's that the person has this powerful, overwhelming feeling that the limb isn't even theirs anymore. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. It turns out AHS isn't just one single thing. Researchers have figured out there are a few distinct types, each with its own weird little personality. So let's meet the three main faces of the alien.
Yep, clinicians usually break the syndrome down into these three main categories: the frontal, the callosal, and the posterior variants. Each one acts differently, and as we're about to see, each one is linked to damage in a totally different part of the brain.
All right, first up is the frontal variant. You can think of this one as the impulsive hand. This is when the hand, usually the person's dominant one, just can't help itself. It'll compulsively grab onto objects, maybe a doorknob or a pen, and it has a really hard time letting go. The crucial thing to understand here is that the person knows it's their hand, they just feel like a helpless passenger watching it do its thing. Then you've got the callosal variant, which I call the conflicted hand. And folks, this is where things get truly wild. The two hands will literally fight each other. Just imagine trying to button up your shirt with your good hand, only for your other hand to follow right behind, unbuttoning it. This battle between the hands is a classic sign of damage to the corpus callosum. That's the big bridge of nerves connecting the two halves of your brain.
And finally, there's the posterior variant, the estranged hand. With this one, the movements are a bit less purposeful. The hand might just float up on its own or make some clumsy gestures. But what really defines this type is that deep psychological feeling of disownership. The patient doesn't just feel like they've lost control, they feel in their bones that this hand is not theirs. It's a foreign object attached to their arm.
So let's just put the two most common types side by side to make it super clear. With the frontal variant, the hand is hyperactive, compulsively grabbing things, but the person still feels like it's their hand. With the posterior variant, the actions are more random, but the feeling of "this is not me" is incredibly strong. It really boils down to the difference between "I can't control my hand" versus "that is not my hand."
So how does a doctor figure out which type they're looking at? Well, it's kind of like being a detective. You start with a main clue, an uncontrollable limb. Then you ask questions. Does it just kind of float around aimlessly? Okay, that points toward the posterior type. Is it literally fighting with the other hand? That's a huge clue for the callosal variant. Or is it grabbing every single thing in sight? That's a classic signature of the frontal type.
Okay, so we've covered the what. Now for the really big question. Why does this happen? What is going on inside someone's brain that makes a part of their own body go completely rogue? The answers lie in a few key theories about how our brains get wires crossed.
So, the first and oldest idea is all about disconnection. Think of the corpus callosum as a massive superhighway of nerves connecting the right and left sides of your brain. They're constantly sending signals back and forth. But what happens if that highway gets damaged? If there's a roadblock? Well, communication breaks down. One side of the brain can't inhibit or coordinate with the other, and you get that chaotic conflict we talked about earlier.
The second theory is just fascinating. It's called object affordance. The basic idea is that everything you see in the world affords an action. A coffee mug just screams, "Pick me up." A light switch begs to be flipped. Now, in a healthy brain, you have a filter that constantly suppresses these urges, saying, nope, don't need to do that now. But in some forms of AHS, that filter is just broken. The hand just acts on every single environmental cue it gets.
And a third theory homes in on faulty motor control. Think of it like this. Every time you decide to move, your brain sends out a little internal memo, predicting what that movement is going to feel like. It says, okay, we're about to lift the arm, and we should expect these sensations. If the actual feeling matches the prediction, your brain goes, yep, that was me, all good. But if there's a glitch and the real feeling doesn't match the memo, the brain gets confused and concludes, whoa, I didn't do that. It must have been something else. And that's when the hand starts to feel alien.
So those theories help us understand the nuts and bolts of it. But let's bring this back down to earth. What are the actual real-world events that can cause this? And more importantly, what is it really like to live inside a body that you can't fully trust?
You know, it's interesting. The causes of alien hand syndrome have really shifted over the years. A while back, it was often tied to things like strokes or specific types of brain surgery. But look at this data from a large modern study. Today, the #1 cause, by a huge margin, is corticobasal syndrome. It's a type of neurodegenerative disease. This tells us that more and more, AHS is a symptom of a much broader problem in the brain.
And we absolutely cannot forget the human side of this. Can you imagine the emotional toll? It's just immense. People report feeling incredibly frustrated, annoyed, even scared. Some will literally yell at their own hand, or they'll try to physically restrain it with their good hand. A lot of them end up personifying it, giving it a name or calling it mischievous, as a way to mentally cope with this betrayal from their own body. So, with a condition this complex and this distressing, you have to wonder, what can be done? Is there any way for people to reclaim their rogue limb and get back a sense of control?
Now, the honest truth is there is no magic pill, no single cure for alien hand syndrome. But, and this is a really important but, that does not mean there's no hope. There are all sorts of clever therapies and strategies that have been developed to help patients manage what's happening.
Yeah, patients and their therapists have basically built a whole toolkit of coping mechanisms. Sometimes it's as simple as just giving the hand a job to do, like holding onto a cane just to keep it busy and out of trouble. Others find that literally giving the limb verbal commands can help. And then you have more clinical approaches like cognitive therapy or even botulinum toxin injections to calm the hand down.
But one of the most brilliant and mind-bending treatments is something called mirror box therapy. So get this, the patient puts their alien hand inside a box where they can't see it. Then, they watch the reflection of their healthy hand in a mirror placed beside the box. This simple visual illusion can actually trick the brain, essentially rewiring its sense of ownership and making it feel like it's back in control of that rogue limb. It's absolutely amazing.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. Alien hand syndrome is so much more than just a medical curiosity. It forces us to confront a really profound question. If the link between your thoughts and your actions can be so completely broken, if your brain can literally disconnect from your body, what does it truly mean to be in control of yourself? It's a pretty staggering thing to think about.